Welcome to With the First Pick here in Indianapolis, Indiana, NFL Combine 2025. That's Petey Prisco, that's Aditi Kinkawala, I'm Ryan Wilson, and that Tennessee Titans second-year head coach Brian Callahan. Brian, thanks for joining us. We're happy to have you here. And I'm going to start off with the probably the most obvious question, one you're going to get a million times. 2019, the Bengals had the first overall pick, and they nailed it.
Yes. With
Joe Burrow. I think he's going to turn out to be a pretty good quarterback.
So far, seems like it.
Seems like it's working out for him.
He had good coaching.
Yeah. So, and you had a lot to do with that. And second year in Tennessee, the Titans had the first overall pick. And you guys have some tough decisions to make. This podcast is called With the First Pick. The Titans have With the First Pick. I know you're going to be asked this a lot, and I would imagine you have an answer in store. I'm interested to hear what the plan is in terms of what the Titans are going to do, because there are two quarterbacks you typically talk about. And the other thing I want to ask you is, how do you find the next Joe Burrow, I guess? Because you draft quarterbacks every year, teams do, and they work out half the time.
It's not an exact science, I think, as we've all learned. Hard to find the next Joe Burrow. He's sort of established himself in a class of his own. But you do your best to try to find the traits that generally tend to translate to winning. And that's guys that can throw on time, that have some anticipation, that can throw accurately. And then there's the secondary component of is what do they do when it's not perfect? You know, can they create? Is their ability to create outside of the structure? And so those are all the things you look for. And you might not check every box at the highest level, and you have to figure out where those things are that you can manage, because not every player has every single trait at the highest level, right? So you have to find ways to work through those things, and how they react under pressure is another part that's really important. And those are hard things to find out, which is why I think you see everyone has a challenge with evaluating quarterbacks and what translates to wins on Sunday.
By the way, he already has you drafted a quarterback if you don't know that already. Which brings me to your quarterback. And we talked last summer. I thought he was going to have a breakout year. I think you thought he was going to have a breakout year. What happened with Will Levis last year?
Look, there's a lot of things that quarterbacks get blamed for that isn't necessarily on them. I think we struggled, particularly up front in pass pro, put him in some tough spots. He took a lot of hits and sacks. Again, sacks are also partly a quarterback thing, but they're also an offensive issue. It's guys getting open fast enough. It's being able to get the ball out before the rush gets there. So there's a lot of things that I think that Will maybe gets blamed for, that we got to be better around him. I got to coach better. So I don't put everything on Will. At the end of the day, we didn't play well enough anywhere as a football team. That's why we're picking first overall. I thought Will was going to have a chance to play good football. I think he learned a lot of hard lessons this year, to be honest. There's some things that he can get a lot better at. I'm actually very excited to see how he comes back in the spring getting ready to compete, because as I told him when he left, that there's at minimum there'll be competition, and he's going to have to get himself ready to worry about what he can do better, and that's all he can control. So I'm excited about his process, separate from the one we're going through now, that I do think he's got a chance to improve, and he has to, and he knows that. But we also have to improve around him, and I think that's really the most important part is we have to be ready for whatever quarterback is playing. We have to do a better job all the way around.
Before we jump to all of that around whoever the quarterback is, I do want to go back to that first pick. Peyton Manning was telling me earlier this year that there's no more difficult position to be in than to be the number one drafted quarterback. So then, is there a piece of you that thinks it might be safer to go find another game changer who's not a quarterback?
I think that's all part of the process. You know, you're trying to find what fits best for your team. There certainly is a lot of pressure on the first overall pick quarterback. And again, for the same reason Peyton said it was hard, you're going to a team that is generally didn't win enough games the year before.
Right.
For whatever reasons those are. They're picking first because they didn't win enough. And so you're being picked with the expectation that you'll help deliver those wins at some point. So it's a pressure-packed situation. It's not for everyone. It's hard, but if you find the right one, it can change the course of your franchise. And so you got to weigh all of those things in the equation when you're looking for who's going to play quarterback.
So one of the things that one of the storylines this draft cycle is Shedeur Sanders playing for his dad the entirety of his life. What's that going to look like when he's no longer playing for Coach Prime? And it made me think of you in a sense, because your dad joined you in Tennessee. And I wonder how much of that is good, how much of that is bad. Does he treat you differently than you might treat another coach that he's working for, or what's that relationship like?
No, we operate as a head coach and the offensive line coach for when it's appropriate, and then there's times when he's able to be dad and be able to offer advice. But he also is a former head coach, and so there's things that he can help me with. We've done a really good job of navigating that. I wouldn't worry about that for a guy like Shedeur. I think he's mature. I think he's got the right makeup. You can tell he's been raised right, and I don't think his dad being involved in his career all of a sudden with him, I don't think that's a factor in my mind. And maybe for some people it is, but you can tell he's ready for the next step. But he's also been given a lot of tools from a guy that knows a lot about football, and I think that's always going to be a benefit than it is more so than it would be a hindrance.
You know, we always hear at this time of the year when somebody has the number one pick, we're open for business. Yeah. And by that, you throw it out there. Anybody want to try and make an offer to go up? Are you guys open for business? And if so, what would you try to get out of that? How far down would you go, that type of situation?
That's probably a better question for Mike Borgonzi than it is for me. But I do think all options are on the table. You know, we're looking at all the potential for how you best build your football team. So, yeah, I think you can ask Mike more details about that when you get a chance. But I would certainly say that we're not locked into anything at the moment. And we're always going to do our due diligence on whatever options present themselves. So you can take that.
This year, and your guys obviously fought. Your players played hard, but there were, quite frankly, quite a few holes.
Yeah.
So when you assess all that you need to do to really shore up this roster, what are kind of the points of emphasis?
I think you're always looking to add players in the trenches, you know, whether it be pass protection, pass rush, and that can come in a lot of different ways, but you're always starting there is how do you best improve those areas. And we got to be better in pass pro. We got to be better at sacking the quarterback. Those two things sort of go hand in hand. And so I would always start there. But we have a lot of work to do. You know, there's things that we got to get accomplished from a roster building standpoint that you may not get to check every single spot over the course of an acquisition cycle. And so we got to find as many of those options as we can and continue to keep building the football team. So a lot of work ahead. And again, always going to try to focus on the interior of the football team first and sort of work your way out from there.
Thanks to Brian Callahan, Tennessee Titans coach, for joining us here. I appreciate your time, Brian. Great luck this week and great luck throughout the draft process.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.